3 biblical keys. What does the Bible say? Remember, the Bible, God's will is that we get around friends. I read to you Psalm 1 yesterday. I told you that one of the big dangers is our friends. And God says, be careful who your friends are, because your friends, if you, Psalm 1, walk and stand and sit with these mocking fools, we become like our friends. What did Paul say? Evil company corrupts good communication. When we stay around the level 1, 2, and 3 fools, we start taking on their characteristics. And so that's why Psalm 1 says, blessed is the man that doesn't walk in foolishness, any level of foolishness. Now, let me show you something real quick. It's not in your notes, but look at Psalm 101. Have you ever wondered how David made it? How David was a man after God's own heart? Look what he chose in Psalm 101. Psalm 101 is David's personal pathway that he followed, that God loved so much, he called him a man after his own heart. Verse 2, I will behave wisely in a perfect way. When will you come to me? He's talking to the Lord. I will walk within my house with a perfect heart. You know, I wrote in my Bible, this is one of the chapters I've done, and I entitled it, How to Start Holy Habits. David shows us how to start holy habits. Number 1, he said, I'm committed to personal integrity. I will walk within my house with a perfect heart. What he said is, when nobody's watching, see, that's what your house is. Not yours. You guys are in the dorms, right? But the concept is, when you're in your house, you're in your space. And no boss, and you have your own room, no parent, you're there. And you know what David said? When I'm alone, I'm going to have personal integrity. Now look at verse 3. I will set nothing wicked before my eyes. Oh. Do you see this thing in my hand? Globally, 90% of all pornography in the world flows through mobile devices. 90%. See this thing? This thing you're all alone with whenever you want to be. You say, that's great. I don't have any problem with pornography. Well, pornography is just one manifestation of, look at this, wicked things before my eyes. Have you ever thought about what it says in verse 3? Look at this. David said, I'm not going to look at anything wicked. That's the pact of purity. But he also said, I hate the work of those who fall away. David said, the fools, the simple, the evil, the rebellious, and the hardened, I hate that. Now let me ask you this. Boy, I will get in trouble with this. Does Taylor Swift embody godliness? Yes or no? Say it out loud. No. Yeah, what is she? She's the first pop star, fastest billionaire of all. Her latest tour rocked America, literally. The people got so excited that it made mini earthquakes in many of her arenas. The U.S. Geological Survey knew where she was doing her stuff because it caused measurable ground movement. So do football games and soccer games, but it was really new for her. Let me ask you this. Where is she? I mean, she's, dating some football player? She's just, such a sweetie. But is she a level 1? I mean, is she living God's way? Yes or no? No. Not from the words of her songs, okay? Don't judge. If you were blind, you could find the answers to these. Listen to what they say. God says, out of the abundance of your heart, Jesus said, your mouth speaks. So listen to the words of people, and you know whether they're a level 1, 2, 3, or 4, or whether they're going God's way. Now, God says, some people say it, but they don't do it. So even within God's way, you have to look and see if their life lines up. Okay, back to David. Verse 3, it shall not cling to me. What David said in verse 3 is, I'm not going to look at anything evil, but also the world can affect me, but I'm not going to let it cling to me. He said, I might get affected by, stuff around me, but I don't want it to become a part of my life. Verse 4, a perverse heart shall depart from me. I will not know wickedness. What is that? He said, I'm going to limit my exposure to evil. You know what I think is fascinating in America? They rate movies and games. And you know what they say? Oh, that movie's okay. It only has partial nudity in it. Isn't that nice? Partial nudity. Do you know what God says about nudity? He said, you shall not look. Actually it says in the Minor Prophets over and over again, do not look at nakedness. Do you know how hard that was for the New Testament believers? They could not go to the theater. I'm talking about the Roman amphitheaters. Did you know that they used to do their plays? And they didn't talk about evil, they actually did it on the stage. Every form of perversion, they did it. And so that's why Christians, do you know why Christians were persecuted in the early world, the Roman Empire? They refused to go to the amphitheaters when there was bloodshed, when there were gladiators killing other gladiators or animals eating people for sport. They wouldn't go to it. They wouldn't go to the theaters when there was any kind of occult stuff or immorality. And so basically, you know what that means? You couldn't go to the sporting events and you couldn't go to the cultural events because both were filled with what displeased God. That's why they were persecuted. Yet, you know what? Christians today, they do it all. They're entertained by bloodshed. You look at most video games, it's killing. And if it's not killing, it's the occult and witchcraft. Have you ever thought, where does the power of the Avengers come from? Is it from God? Is Thor channeling God? No, he's a Norse, pagan, occultic, witchcraft God. But he's handsome, and he's from Australia, right? And he's a hunk. You see, look back at David. He said, I will set nothing wicked before my eyes, even if it's in a beautiful package. I don't want it to cling to me. A perverse heart will depart from me. I don't want to know wickedness. And then verse 5, whoever secretly slanders his neighbor, him I will destroy. The one who has a haughty look, I will not endure. Now here's verse 6. My eyes shall be on the faithful of the land. David said, I'm not going to make a hero out of fools. When Bonnie and I were pastoring, one of the first things we did in every church, we started the 100 homes. And in our first year, we visited 100 families for dinner at their house. That's 2 every week. And we had 8 kids. Can you imagine inviting the pastor? And for a lot of people, they had to set up a massive table. They'd never had that many people over to dinner. But one of the things why I did that was I wanted to get to know the people. And you know what I would find people in our church? They would proudly take me around, and their kids would take me to their bedroom, and we'd get there, and there would be a life-size poster of Michael Jackson. You ever heard of him? Look at this. My eyes shall be on the faithful in the land. I'd get to another room, there'd be a life-size poster of Mick Jagger. Do you know who he is? The Rolling Stones. There would be a life-size poster of, depending on whether it was a boy or a girl, of whoever. And I thought, that's their hero. Have you thought about that? That's their hero. And you know what David said? I want proper heroes. I'm not going to have the unfaithful as my heroes. Onward, verse 8. Early I will destroy all the wicked of the land, that I may cut off the evildoers from the city of the Lord. Now, David was the king, and he was getting rid of idols, but this really, really applies to us, especially with foolishness. But keep going. God advises us to value our friends, invest in our friends, and give counsel to our friends. So we should have wise friends that are not foolish, is the whole reason that I said all that. 3 ways to work with our neighbors. What about your neighbors that are not Christians? What are we supposed to do? Just only be around church people? No. We can become a witness to our neighbors by just keeping our word, just being honest with them, striving for peace. I remember many places we've lived that there's the constant trash problem, you know. When we lived in California, our neighbor would always put his trash cans over into our driveway because he wanted, and you just make choices to strive for peace with your neighbors. Never deceive or mislead. Proverbs is filled with how to be a good witness by just living out the truth of God.